everybody, and welcome to the, how would I call it, an exceptional summer episode of Full Funnel Live. And we are joined live by Reyndert Coppelmans, uh, obviously my founder Andrei, myself, broadcast here from Spain. Very, very hot, very, very humid, at least in the city of Valencia. I don't know how it is where Andrei.
Same here.
Reyndert, I hope you're having, as once I was in Belgium, they called this the healthy summer weather, because on Zomerweg, which was like 19 degrees and a bit rainy. I don't know.
It was exactly like you were describing, Vlad. So today it's just bit cloudy, 20 degrees overcast, so all good.
Perfect, healthy Dutch summer weather. Let us know, guys, where you're joining us from. I really appreciate you taking the time off in the middle of holiday season, especially here in Europe. Meanwhile, I'll briefly introduce our episode today. I think we first spoke back in October last year, and then we worked for a while together on a pilot email program at itsme. You can tell us more about yourself and the company, but I just wanted to share with the audience, like, why did we decide to have this episode and what kind of stood out to me in our collaboration and the project we did together. I think like two things. First of all is I was really impressed by the way that you engage in the program. We have worked with many CMOs, and you don't see very often that you have somebody who is just there all the time to support the team on the one hand with everything they need, and also in the background working with the stakeholders, making sure that the key decisions are being made, etc. So I was honestly quite impressed by that, and I wanted to share it with other CMOs. Look, this is what you need to do. So that's my personal reason for inviting you. And the second reason, I think, what might be interesting for a lot of people in the audience is that we started on a product that it had zero awareness in the target market. We had to build, like, the salesperson didn't have the network there. It was new to them. The product was relatively new to the market. And so we had to create awareness, and not just like awareness in the broad sense, but like with very specific set of accounts. And I think this is something that a lot of teams are struggling with and would be good to dissect. So after this not so short intro, Reyndert, would you mind introducing yourself and the company that you worked at once while we were doing this project?
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm a CMO, previously also held VP marketing roles in HR tech and legal tech, software or SaaS businesses, most recently with itsme. So itsme is a digital identity platform for mostly regulated industries. So in essence, it's a B2C app on the one hand. So it's a digital identity app used by more than 8 million Belgians on a daily basis. So about 500 million transactions that we do on a yearly basis. And on the B2B side, we have over 3,000 different platforms. So enterprises, organizations that are using us in highly regulated verticals like banking, insurance, energy, telco, and postal mostly. So we're about 30 to 40 million revenue range. And of course, we're based out of Belgium. Have grown in Belgium, but we saw that the Belgian market was maturing, so diversification really became a top company priority for us, and that's also one of the reasons that we engaged with this pilot here with Full Funnel.
Thank you. I think I can just dive into details immediately. As Vlad mentioned, you guys launched a new product. No customers, no awareness, no existing network. What was, if you can just walk us through the business case and why you decided to pick up, let's say, ABM program of doing a pilot ABM for this brand new use case instead of focusing on the product that has already proved to be successful?
Yeah, so it's good question, of course. So a few things to take into account for our context, right? So any sort of market opportunities that arise, so new segments for us to move into are typically regulation driven. So we're a digital identity platform business. So lots has to do with compliance, of course, with identification and authentication. So typically what we see is whenever sort of new laws come into effect, they create new use cases for me. For itsme, sorry, for myself as well. But other than that, so itsme is also a network effect driven platform. So without users, there's no platforms or businesses wanting to use us and vice versa. So it's really difficult to internationalize without a clear local ecosystem anchoring. Lastly, I think that there was also, I'm just giving you the full context here of what drove that decision, is that we have about 95% brand awareness in Belgium, and that includes consumers, but also B2B buyers, of course. The organization had grown so tremendously over the last few years, and with that brand, of course, is that the organization never sold without the brand doing the heavy lifting. So basically, any and all accounts, enterprise accounts in Belgium, and any consumer, in fact, that you'll ask on the street, they will have heard of the company itsme. I think the bigger challenge that we had in Belgium was not necessarily the brand awareness or the trust, if you will, but more on problem and solution awareness. Yeah, and why do we decide to engage in an ABM program? I think there's a couple of reasons for that. So when I came on board, yeah, we started a few lead generation programs, old-fashioned, traditional lead generation, if you will, around use cases. So we had about 4 different use cases, being, for example, digital signatures, where we would do webinars, we would develop content and push those over digital channels, the standard playbook, basically. This casts a really wide net. However, we wanted to get, we're moving on to a more of an account-based approach, if you will. So we started to focus on enterprises that had the largest expansion opportunity. And then we had a long tail of a lot of smaller players, if you will. So when I came on board, we had those 4 generic lead generation programs running, if you will. And also we started to drive more towards an account-based approach by focusing on enterprise accounts in Belgium. Yeah, so for us starting to engage with ABM, I mean, I have worked with it in the past. I knew this was the best fit for enterprise accounts. I mean, those lead generation programs that we were running previously, they just weren't yielding the results that the CRO was also expecting, for example, to drive pipeline.
I'm glad you mentioned that, because at the same time, there were a number of reasons from the business perspective, the chicken and an egg problem that you have with itsme, right? So choosing the specific product without awareness. But I think this posed a challenge. You mentioned the CRO and the rest of the executive teams, of course. They are looking at the numbers, they're looking at the revenue pipeline. Now, at the same time, having chosen a product with little awareness, having chosen product in an early stage, I just wonder, how did these internal discussions go? How did you basically get the buy-in on the one hand from the executive team, from the CRO and sales, but also like, how did you adjust the expectations, simply given the fact that we are in that early stage?
Yeah. Yeah, it's a good question. So I think so when I started thinking about ABM, about internalizing that, what I saw is that the marketing team itself, which was relatively new, to be honest. I was the second marketer on board. We're now with 8. Was relatively junior and also didn't have any credibility yet to dictate a new way of working. Whereas we're pivoting to that account-based approach, if you will. So at least in Belgium. So I knew that this was the right way forward. I think one of the other things that I also noted in the organization is when I just came in, there had now really been a clear outbound muscle that had been established, if you will. So just lifting off that brand. Revenue was making their targets. So really, there was no real big incentive for them to start experimenting with a new way of working, or for us as marketing to come in, all right, this is how we're going to do it moving forward, because we believe it will yield better results. I think what I latched on to, so I know we were having those discussions internally. We didn't see a really good fit, or at least buy-in inside of the organization. Is that I found a company target. So we, as an organization, we set a diversification target towards the end of the year to start moving away from our primary product line and start diversifying into other segments. And I knew that at that point, all right, this is the right sort of goal to attach to, if you will, because it has company priority. The CEO has signed off on it. It lends itself very well to an ABM approach, I think. So I started having those discussions first with the CEO. So there was a bit of time pressure, of course, because we want to reach a certain revenue number by the end of the year. If we started then calculating the sales cycle from opportunity to pipeline, which was about 5 months, back towards the end of the year, we knew we had to create a pipeline in August. And that gave us basically from February to August to generate a pipeline or generate any meetings. So from that sense, company got a diversification target and also that time pressure, if you will. There was buy-in already at the MT to start moving ahead and give this full priority, if you will.
That's fantastic. It's not always the case for the majority of teams that we are working with, because in many cases you need to build an internal use case, then prove it, then get buy-in from leadership, from CFO, from sales. But also, here is an interesting observation. Quite often, we have experienced the projects where CMOs just bring us in, or another agency, not necessarily we need to speak about ABM. And they kind of do, let's say, a visionary job, right? Okay, these guys own the methodology, they can help us to implement it, and that's it. And then they more or less disappear, right? Obviously, it depends case to case, but quite often CMOs, they don't want to be in the trenches, don't want to be hands-on. I totally agree. You need to own the vision, you need to be strategic, but at the same time, if you are not hands-on, you don't have the visibility and you don't really know if your team is putting enough effort, right? Is your team doing the right things in the right way? And if they are following best practices, right? Because quite often the teams could say, I'm working on it, I'm doing my job, oh, we are creating the content or doing any other activity, right? But it's not always the case that it's a good one. So my question to you, where is the line between being strategic and hands-on, and what, let's say, hands-on involvement specifically in ABM looks like from your perspective? You can share your experience, obviously.
Yeah. No, thanks for asking that question, Andrei. So I think, especially in smaller organizations, I mean, we're not a huge organization, right? So we're about 150 people, 30 to 40 million revenue range. You need to be hands-on as a marketing leader. My core belief in this really is that you can't call something priority one and then be the one person missing from the room, if you will. So I really wanted to stay personally involved because it was a company priority as well. So they also gave me the opportunities to start driving that OKR or that goal that was relevant for the entire organization. So that's one. And second, I also wanted to send a signal to the team that this is high priority by being in those meetings, working with them in the trenches, if you will, on block in real time. I think there's a couple of blockers that came up in the process, and especially when moving into product and the net new market and the net new product line. There is going to be a lot of feedback that you need processing, so you need to understand the market really firsthand in order to be able to make the right calls and help the team move forward. Otherwise, they get stuck and the process is delayed because the issues are not surfaced fast enough, if you will. Another big reason for me was also to lend executive weight to get priority with subject matter experts. We have fantastic subject matter experts internally, compliance officers who are really top of their field, who are also regarded as such within their respective functional communities, right? So your CISOs, your product leaders, to get some priority from them internally was also necessary to put some executive weight behind that. Lastly, I think what was also an important one for me is that I wasn't going to sit in the meeting or in the full pilot, if you will. I wanted to understand what the actions were to be able to establish the system, so a repeatable way of working that allows you to steer. So instead of just simply delegating it to hey, your ABM lead or your demand generation manager, marketing ops person, to say, hey, go do, and then report back to me. At this stage where we were at in this rollout, in our go-to-market, validating still a bit of a product market fit in that new market, if you will, it was a bit too soon for me to say, right, I'll leave it entirely to the teams to figure it out.
I really liked as well when you're thinking about, being strategic versus, let's say, being hands-on. The line, I mean, you understood the product, you understood the market, you knew what the team was doing, and only because you had that knowledge, you were able to detect. For example, I remember one of the bottlenecks in the implementation was lack of in-depth product marketing and strategic understanding, right? And at the same time, unfortunately, we're hiring product marketers. So you had to jump in and solve that problem. So I think it's also interesting to know, like, okay, without that visibility into what's happening, without really knowing where the blocking points are, you wouldn't be able to solve it on the one hand. And on the other hand, also, you were just willing to roll up the sleeves and just dive deeply into the ICP, into the challenges, talk together with us, with your subject matter expert, to really kind of break it down, create a content marketing strategy, etc. So that's something that I personally really appreciate. Now, speaking of that specific ICP and, early stage, not known as a brand. So I'm really interested to understand how do you approach it? Because I remember, like, we started with a very wide potential audience. Anybody who has basically an app with a lot of users that need to authenticate it, narrowing down to a very, very specific ICP. So, like, if you could just walk us through the process of choosing where to focus on, ending up with essentially a dozen of accounts, like the sole process of narrowing down, and then having those accounts, okay, we can start talking about, hey, how do we actually start creating awareness with them when there is none?
Yeah, it was a bit of groundwork that we obviously needed to do. So maybe to answer your question, Vlad, I'll revert quickly back to getting that internal buy-in, because I think it's also essential to get the buy-in ahead of time before we start the actual pilot, because we were going back and forth a bit in that 6 months. I think we were in touch in October and then launched in April on what was the right product line to focus our efforts on. I remember having some discussions with sales managers that were saying, like, yeah, getting meetings is easy. Tough meetings was that's a no buy-in on the ABM program. First, we attached to a goal of a downsized product and a downsized pricing, so to be able to cater to a more price-sensitive segment for itsme. But yeah, we didn't have any track record in those segments just yet, so there was really no product market fit. And as you remember, regulation is everything in our business, so the regulation was still coming. So we didn't know exactly what the compliance requirements were for our potential customers. So I remember having that discussion with you, Vlad, and you were also pushing back a bit on, okay, hey, the typical ABM implementation is really an extension of your validated process, right? Your initial market traction, if you will. And I think you rightly pushed back on that internally, and that also gave me the ammo really to go back to the drawing board together with the CEO and then select one of the sort of components in the tech stack of itsme called Nextout, which was an authentication solution that was acquired a few years ago. Well, that company itself had about 5 or so enterprise customers, including a payroll solution with over 22K employees worldwide. So big enterprise customers. And at that point, I knew, okay, this is the right segment for our ABM funnel, full funnel pilot, if you will. So we had some early product market fit. We still needed to do some validation. And it's marketing towards enterprise customers in a very tough segment, right? IT and product people are not the easiest personas to market to. If we then start moving down, right, so we got that segment selected. How are we building our segment hypotheses, right? I think that's the core of your question that you wanted to get to. So we sat down with the product experts and we wanted to understand, okay, what are sort of the distinctive strengths of our product? Not looking at any customer pain points that we solve, but okay, what is it just that from a product point of view, what do we do right? There were a few dimensions that we then identified. For example, on the criticality of the user journey, the frequency of usage, the company's technological maturity, if you will, or security maturity, if you will, is also a very important dimension for us. Companies using older types of solutions, they run into bottlenecks from which we can build a business case more clearly. And what I then did together with the team, with the internal subject matter experts as well, is to map out those dimensions, create a simple scoring model, so Likert scoring, so 1 to 5, where we used 3 dimensions as an attractor. So, for example, the security maturity was an attractor. So, frequency of usage was an attractor. So, the more that consumers of our clients or of our potential clients use the app, the better for us, if you will. Now we had 1 detractor. So there was the maturity scoring. So the lower the technological maturity of the solutions that were used by our potential customers, the better. We then looked at sort of the top 5 high priority segments that then were selected. We started to deep dive into the segment itself. So we wanted to assess against broader dimensions like market momentum, what's the economic potential, what is the fit with the product and the differentiation, if you will, and are we able to reach and serve that market effectively? So that already started narrowing down some markets. I think if I look back on that entire process, one of the pushbacks that I got, and this is more of an organizational bias that we have. So we have a lot of people from that have worked at banks, for example, big retail banks in Belgium, and what they were suggesting for us to bring that solution there. I pushed back on that because the banking segment in overall is pretty mature in terms of the technology that was used. But that was definitely one of the hiccups for which I needed to be in the room in order to be able to push that through and give that the right direction, especially in those early stages of the pilot, if you will.
That makes a lot of sense.
Sorry.
Yeah. Sarah, go ahead.
Yeah, so if I then look at the pilot setup, right? So we were still early. We have early product market fit, but I think one of the goals for our ABM program was as well to select the highest priority segment, to start meaningful conversations with the relevant stakeholders and also gather feedback, right? So to validate that indeed the segment hypothesis that we defined, which was rather theoretical, does indeed hold, and also develop a sharper understanding on the buying context, pain, and decision processes, if you will. And in the process itself, the goal of creating that repeatable collaboration model between marketing, sales, and product. I think that so going through those steps, selected created an overview of the long list of segments, selected the top 5, analyze the potential of those segments, and then moving into, okay, what's the highest priority segment that we can deep dive on with full funnel in the pilot.
Now, I would love to ask you an interesting question. You mentioned that you have done several lead generation activities, right, that were not that much successful. And now, for the new product, you need to create awareness first, right? But awareness for marketing and sales often means completely different things, right? And also in terms of execution, the understanding of marketing team and sales team, what should be done to create that awareness might be completely different. So 2 questions. How did you get that alignment on what actually awareness means and what we need to do to create that awareness? And with the hindsight, what has worked for you to create awareness? So maybe just sharing a few programs or activities that help to get some results and meaningful engagement.
Yeah. So I think one of the things that I'll mention, also the learnings from itsme in Belgium, is that just brand awareness overall is not where we were after here, right? So we didn't want to just put and build that trusted relationship with the brand itsme. I think for ourselves in this stage of the launch and the rollout into this segment was much more about problem and solution awareness. For validating that indeed our personas at these accounts, product people at payroll solutions, for example, have the problems that we were going after, and indeed are looking for solutions in that area. So for me, that was really the core of the if you ask me what awareness means within this product within the full funnel pilot, it was that. And I think the team was also very aligned on what that meant, right? So we had a few marketeers that were on board, but also very important, the revenue person that was brought into this was actually a new enterprise AE, who understood that you need to first develop, be able to understand the problem and the solution that you're pitching, if you will, in order to be able to create broader brand awareness. So you're not going to come just with a simple brand awareness campaign, if you will, to the market and expect results. I think what we did very well in this pilot is that we created separate account narratives based on the publicly communicated goals of that company, right? So once we had selected that one vertical that we wanted to go after, we did account research. Vlad, I remember that very clearly, that process that we were up against something like a few hundred HR services or HR apps in Europe. That was part of the segment that we wanted to go after. And what I think supported the success really was that you took us through a narrative on doing account research in depth, looking at who are the DMUs in this organization, what have they communicated online, what are the company goals, and then trying to draft a narrative on how a solution enabled that goal, if you will. And I think in that sense, that's one of the activities that we'll highlight from the pilot, is that has brought us a lot of that has allowed us basically to skip the entire sort of brand awareness stage, because we made something so specific and sort of resonating for that account that it's simply too hard to ignore for most.
All right. So I think what's interesting here is that you're again linking the bit of a strategic work, account research for that segment, for the specific accounts, and then linking our messaging content to it. But I think also what might be interesting for people to understand, just to kind of wrap it up very quickly, I remember there were specific, let's say, activities or tactics that we use that help create awareness in those accounts, because I believe we ended up with something like a dozen that we were actively working on. So once we had those insights, we knew what to say. What did you find from your perspective, from the perspective also I'm interested from the salesperson who was involved, Caroline, what worked in getting that engagement in a market that she said herself, like, I'm not connected to anybody, they don't know me, these are technical people, I don't have that, I'm not one of them. So what worked from that perspective?
Yeah, so I think so the one thing that really stood out was the posting a love letter from her account, right? So crafting an account narrative and making it public on Carlene's profile, then tagging the right people in it. And it wasn't even necessarily that the person itself that we were targeting. I think it was the CPO at the time and the CTO of that one account, or the first account that we did through this process. Was actually reading or responding to it, but it's also about creating visibility within the organization. And at that point, I think the first sign of success, or that we were doing something right, was the legal counsel coming back that she had seen this message and that she would bring it up to the chief product officer in the next few weeks. And that was really that first moment for me that it clicked, and where I said, okay, hey, this is fantastic. We need to do this with all our accounts, of course.
Just before you dive into the question, Andrei, just wanted to drop 2 cents about this, because I remember I got a message from somebody that happened to know in that account. We had a chat. They were giving me feedback on that love letter, that LinkedIn post that was created specifically for that account. But also, I remember that because we were so clear on, you did all that work to understand what were the most important criteria, how do we prioritize those accounts, etc. I remember when the sales rep had to go to an event in Berlin, and she said, hey, you know what? I have 1,300 people there that I could potentially talk to. They gave me this app. So what do I do? How do I talk to them? And so basically we were able to take the criteria and now prioritize and go from 1,300 down to below 100 potential people. I mean, in this case, right? Obviously behind them were the accounts. And if I remember correctly, she contacted them and ended up in one day, it was a single day event, speaking to 14 buyers, coming back with a real sales qualified opportunity from that event. So I think just understanding in depth, on the one hand, how to prioritize those accounts, what is a good fit, what is not a good fit. You can use it not only for building the list, but even in situations like this. You're going to an event, who should I talk to? What should I tell to them? And just sharing this because it worked so well as well, also as a tactic. But I wanted to just drop those cents, Andrei. If you wanted to ask a question, please go ahead.
I just saw a good question from Daniel. He is asking Reyndert, how much leverage did you as CMO have over the sales team, and were you the CEO as well, or how much did the CEO support your activities? Practical examples if possible.
Yeah, great question. I think leverage. I had leverage in the sense that me and the CRO, and of course the direct the reporting manager that was sitting under the CRO of that sales rep, of the account executive that was involved in the pilot, that I got their buy-in ahead of the pilot, which really helped. I mean, with the CRO making this pivot to an account-based approach, if you will, was one big driver, and then being able to attach it to the company goals really what gave a lot of leverage over the project itself. So I feel in the heat of the moment, also in the sessions that we had, the weekly pipeline reviews, we were really sitting there as a team, supported by both the CRO as well as myself. CRO wasn't directly involved, nor was the sales manager, but we were just sitting there as a team, and that revenue person also had a direct target on the diversification goal. I think that's one important element. And the second was also that we very clearly communicated the upfront investment and the time commitments that were necessary of all the people involved in this pilot. So that gave us, that gives you enough freedom to move within the pilot, if you will, and enough dedicated focus from the entire team before they get pulled into other sorts of priorities that sit within the organization. I'm not sure if I if I answered the full question, but if I answered everything here, or maybe a quick check with you, Andrei.
I think it's good. If Daniel, if you want to follow up and ask any follow-up questions, feel free to drop them in the chat and we'll bring them.
So what's interesting is like what I've observed in other organizations is the story starts similar to the way that you explained. You get the buy-in ahead of the time. You're discussing the expectations, time commitments, etc., etc. But somehow it seems like sometimes that executives have short memory. and I'm half joking here, because what I mean by that is that, you know, after a month or two, things are, you know, happening. Of course, they have other priorities. They're thinking about other things. Maybe there's some pressure. Maybe they're whatever might happen internally. What we see very often is like executives coming, hey, but what happened with that? Like, where are the results? Where are the leads? Where's the revenue, right? And obviously there is high pressure on those executives, especially on sales, to generate these kind of results. So I just wonder, you know, going from that initial buy-in, but then keeping that momentum, keeping that, now I'm going to sound like AI, keeping that buy-in alive throughout the execution and later on. How do you basically, and especially at the beginning, especially with the pre-product market fit, where you don't have immediate revenue results, even if it wasn't pre-product market fit with long sales cycles, enterprise customers, you can't expect to have anything within a couple of months. The question really is, how do you maintain this support for the pilots that deal with the short memory and obviously the short-term pressure?
Yeah, of course, and I think the answer here is twofold. So one is on getting alignment on the timeline from your MT as well. So I mentioned at the beginning, we had a revenue target towards the end of the year. We all understood, okay, hey, we have a 5-month sales cycle from opportunity to close. Means that we have to have pipe in August and engaged accounts in April, May. Let's say, to follow that sequence of the funnel entirely. So I think getting that buy-in ahead of time was an important one that allowed us to stretch beyond, or stretch the vision a bit beyond. Okay, what's next during the quarter? Right, the pilot was only about three months. And anyway, I think for when we're moving to enterprise or one-on-one ABM, as we were doing, we're typically also talking longer sales cycles. I mean, other organizations also have that. So I think it's really important to manage the expectation on the timeline and when to see results upfront. While at the same time, we also had regular check-ins at the MT or updates that, the product marketer, in this case me, but in a later stage we did hire someone. Managed to hire someone that was also on board into the pilot, as well as Carleen giving status updates in the MT on a monthly basis. So that helped us to go from, all right, we have a promise, we're closely following up with it, we're reporting back the results and the learnings as well. So what worked, what hasn't worked really, to stay top of mind and keeping that buy-in with the rest of the MT and especially the CRO, of course.
Love it. One question that I want to ask you is about the tactics and more specifically about the collaboration with sales, right? Vlad mentioned a few things that you have done, and you as well, that you have done with your account executive, Carleen. What I would love to specify and ask you, I know that you were doing function-based roundtables, let's say for chief digital officers, right? And these kind of activities help you to bring the strategic buyers and have the good engagements. But many teams where what I have heard from the trenches, from the LinkedIn community as well, for a lot of teams, it's a big problem to host an event that then can prove the ROI, right? Teams treat it as more or less lead generation activity, right? So they try to bring as many people as possible and then pitch them after the event. Or there is another problem, which we have heard from one client. They have regional teams that they have field marketing function. They plan these roundtables without even talking to sales. But when the event is scheduled, then they reach out to sales. Hey, do you know someone who might be interested in it, right? And you already have a problem because sales don't see this as a kind of activity that helps them to create the pipeline. So if you can just walk us through your setup, what worked and how it worked, I think that would be a brilliant example.
Yeah. So I think if you look back at this pilot, we already said the love letters were a big part of that. But in order to get engagement also from different accounts, you can't keep prodding them with, hey, here's a love letter, here's another one. Please book a meeting, right? So you need to do more in order to get that engagement. I think what we did well in the end that we were planning on running a webinar at that point, but that was too short notice, and we were still figuring out, okay, what are the right topics to speak to. So we had those very specific account narratives developed, but not something that was generic enough for the entire sector. We decided not to go the webinar route. On the other hand, we had two events, like Vlad already mentioned, an event in Berlin and one other industry event coming up in Amsterdam. And in order just to get that engagement, to have another reason really to seek that contact with personas that hadn't replied yet, what we did is we decided to set up a boat ride in Amsterdam, which is part of another go-to-market activity specifically for the Dutch market, if you will. A boat trip in Amsterdam. It's lovely. Spend some time drinking and eating over canals. Fantastic. Whenever you're in Amsterdam, please come do that. But we also decided to invite people that were probably not based in Amsterdam, that probably weren't going to this event. But it generated some, because of the nature of the event, it's low key. It's not only talking about the business itself, but it's really a relationship building event. We decided to still send them an invite to be able to create that extra touch point and visibility within the account, and at the same time build a little bit of goodwill. And that also really helped our salesperson or account executive in this case, to stay in touch over time and build that relation a bit further. So I think those two main things were the most important sort of touch points or tactics that we enlisted during the pilot.
And given the different things that you have done and having the challenge that we had with the new market, etc., maybe I don't know how much you are able to share the results, but how would you describe the results in the way that you can share them? I think everybody in the audience is always interested to know that.
Yeah, the $1 million question, right? That's I think so. If we look at the overall set of accounts that we started the pilot with, I think what we saw was an engagement rate of about 40% of the accounts within 3 months. So that was really astounding to me, and also told me that, hey, we're doing something right. It didn't stop there, luckily. So thanks also to the close collaboration between the account executive and then the content marketer, the demand generation manager, and then the product marketer. We also saw an increasing meeting rates within 27% of the accounts that we initially had reached out to within those 12 weeks, which to me, again, we fully made the goal of this pilot, which was to have meaningful conversations with segments that we were prioritizing. So If any, I can share those results.
Awesome.
Thank you. I would love to touch also the expansion part. Maybe it's not the part exactly of this pilot, but anyhow, I know you're a big fan of bow tie model from Winning by Design team, right?
Yeah.
What I have observed is that in many organizations, expansion is rather ad hoc activity. It's rarely well planned, and in most cases, it's an account executive who receives a list of enterprise customers with, let's say, upselling or cross-selling opportunity, and they do nothing aside from, let's say, standard outreach, right? Hey, we are working with you. Would you like to buy one more thing from us? More or less, I'm kidding, of course. And marketing rarely participates actively in expansion. So from your experience, what's the role of marketing in expansion programs and why that should be prioritized? And what works actually? Any practical examples?
Yeah, I know. I think also in our discussions, Vlad, because I know we touched on that during the pilot as well. I think the one of the roles in marketing is to offer an expansion place, if you will, and especially also for itsme. I'll give you a very concrete example. So traditionally, we have been in touch mostly with the implementation managers within our account, so mostly IT folk that were actually implementing our product into the day-to-day, if you will. However, we completely lost track of the business side, right? So also in banks and insurance companies, you have your marketers, you have your salespeople that are accountable for a revenue target there. Removing some friction in their customer flows is a huge value proposition for us. And so if we're looking at, hey, our account managers reaching out into our existing customer accounts to IT folk that were basically not understanding, hey, we've got this great thing that we can help you generate more revenue with. They were just concerned with, all right, how do we implement this well? What's the quality of the data that's coming through, et cetera, et cetera. So I think one of the roles of marketing in those expansion plays can really be to, broaden the view a bit within that account and reach also the commercial profiles in our view. One other thing is why I think the approach works with the love letters works so well is that it really elevates the salesperson as a thought leader to enterprise buyers. So enterprise buyers are not looking, your CPO of a bank, they're not going to participate in a webinar on the next thing in banking, if you will. They want one-on-one contact, one-on-one engagement. And I think this is also really where marketing can play a big role, where we try to elevate Carlene's profile to CPOs, to a very critical audience, if you will, by creating the right content and posting with and for her, if you will. And I think lastly, it's a bit of a pet peeve of mine, but I'm also still a big fan with all this AI slop slurling around on LinkedIn and online, if you will, with generic content is really to bring a more consultative mindset as marketers to the go-to-market, if you will. So how we did that concretely within itsme is that we try to generate market insights of the customers of our customers. So we approached and surveyed consumers of bigger banks, if you will, insurance companies, and then presented those insights back to our existing accounts. So what we did here is really weaponize our account managers here to have that conversation. So not only create the visibility within the account, but also give them a tool to be able to say, hey, I have a relevant insight for you, and thereby uplifting their own relationship with with those buyers, if you will.
I love these tactics. We don't really spend a lot of time talking about it, but just wanted to kind of highlight this. helping the internal champion, the person who was implementing, who might be technical, who might not be thinking about the actual business side of that, helping kind of amplifying their work and their results with the people in the business. So kind of, they're not the marketers, but we can help them communicate that to the rest of the organization. I loved also, we didn't say this, but when you mentioned that boat ride, it was a mix of prospects and customers. So you were always thinking about, you know what, we're doing something here to create brand awareness in a new country, etc. But why not also invite the existing customers? And I think this is such an easy, how they say, low-hanging fruit to do that. It's not only showing the appreciation, building the relationship with the existing customer and potentially leading to the expansion, but also you're bringing kind of live testimony, people who can actually, you know, a lot of credibility, and they can talk to their peers, etc. And I think this is also something that we observe over and over again. This, what you did with the boat ride, or in other these roundtables, even with the benchmark that you mentioned in the research, it's like these buyers, senior buyers, they actually they trust other peers, their industry peers from other organizations the most. So whenever you can actually enable that, is really a big win, net new or existing and expansion. Now, given everything we spoke about and given everything that we have learned, actually also, because there was a lot of learning and we always learn, and of course your team has learned, you yourself, when if you had to do it again, if you had a similar mandate again, new product, new market, how would you approach it? Maybe are there any things that you would done maybe differently earlier on, or what would be, maybe put the question differently, what would be an advice that you would give to somebody who is in that situation?
Very good question. I'm not sure if I would do something differently. So both and I don't want to toot my own horn here, but both in getting the buy-in and you know, like running this pilot together with you, I think it went really well. What I would do differently, or the one thing that really comes to mind, is steer closer to validating. So we were still struggling to validate our segment hypothesis, so wanted to see more proof points, if you will, from potential new customers. To steer the activity closer to that and keep a bit of discipline in that rhythm, because I felt in the early stages of the pilot and internally as well, we were going in a bit of we were being pulled in all different directions. Again, as a leader, I think you need to be involved, especially in that early stage, because otherwise you're going into discussions on, hey, we should activate the channel and start selling via channel partners, which was promptly blocked because I felt that if we don't know how to sell yet, why would a channel partner know that? But exactly those kinds of decisions is where you need to be there early as a leader. And I would only say keep a bit more discipline on that single segment and validate that before moving on to new segments. I think it's also the beauty of the job, if you will, but account executives also have a tendency to be more opportunistic. To maintain that discipline in the team. But other than that, I would 100% repeat every single step that we just described here.
I love it. And yeah,
go ahead.
Okay, I just wanted to say thank you for all these amazing insights. It's a brilliant conversation, and I have seen already some good feedback from people in the chat. Guys, we have a few minutes also to answer your questions. If you want to drop questions, ask same questions like Daniel, feel free to drop these questions in the chat. And otherwise, I would love also maybe just ask the one ultimate question from my side. And this kind of comes back to what I mentioned in the beginning. If you were, let's say, if you were talking to a fellow CMO right now, the person who wants to run the same or create the same ABM motion. What would you advise in terms of creating visibility from day one? How would you suggest to build that visibility, and what layers should that person have inside that visibility?
I think it all starts, so with setting up these kinds of new initiatives, you need to start top down, right? So getting validation, of course, from the operational level to say, okay, are there at least some champions to be found here? So identifying, for example, the new enterprise AE, which just came on board and wants to prove themselves, right? So in that sense, it's a perfect way to experiment to figure out a way of working with that person and letting that person also become a champion. So that's really on the individual rep level, if you will. I think also from a marketing point of view, to be honest, there wasn't much buy-in to be created there or visibility to be created, because we all saw that the lead generation that we were doing earlier wasn't building that exact traction in the accounts that we were going after. So the realization on, okay, yeah, we need to pivot to ABM. Absolutely, I did that. The team was fully bought into that already. I think the big challenge there was really to keep reminding the rest of the organization on why we're not picking up other priorities, because we're focusing on this. So that's more the operational layer. I think, if I would start again top down, I would advise my fellow CMO, get your CRO on board on the way of working, on making that pivot to an account-based motion, if you will. And if you already have it, try to attach this pilot to company level OKR, right? So that's the diversification target that we as itsme had. Really made the big difference in keeping everyone in line on, okay, these are the results that we're looking for in the short term, in the near term, and in the long term. And after you've done that, talk to the middle management layer of people that also need to get bought in, of course, with the support and with the sponsoring from your CRO. I think that's really the most important parts of that. And then consistently following up on sort of the promises and insights that you've made. So every month on a frequent basis, sit down with the MT, talk about the actual results, the learnings from those results, the activity that we've done, what worked, what didn't work, and then move on. I think that if you manage that complete package, if you will, you're going to get organizational buy-in no matter what.
I think you're a little bit modest, and speaking directly to Andrei's question about visibility, and you did one simple thing that I think every CMO should do. I remember you were on a train, you were in your car, you were waiting for a plane or whatever. It didn't matter. You were apologizing, hey guys, I can't really maybe speak or whatever, but you were there during those calls, during those weekly check-ins. You were there listening to know what's actually happening in the team, what's actually happening on the ground. So in terms of visibility, I think from your visibility into what's actually going on, I think this made a big difference, because you were able to spot bottlenecks early and to jump in to solve them. You were able to not put pressure, but let's say to motivate maybe specific people to deliver on their promises so that the whole program moves on. So I think it's a very simple thing that is accessible to anybody, just joining, being there. I think also the team will appreciate this. I mean, team will appreciate your support. That's just my observation from what I've seen. If I would be in your role, I would take that as a learning point, and that's what I would do for sure. So thank you for that. Anyhow, thank you so much for the whole download of the experience. I really enjoyed it. I hope the other people did as well. This is a good one from Danielle. AI will never be able to do that. Yes, AI can help, maybe can bring some of the insights from those meetings, but cannot be that presence there to support the team for sure.
So much for the AI CMO, huh?
Yes, yes. Unless, actually, we didn't tell you guys, but this is not real Reyndert. This is his AI clone now.
No, AI can do that if you replace your team with AI agents and then post on LinkedIn.
And then have an AI leader and just spend a lot of money on tokens. That's guaranteed.
Fair enough,
Anyhow, thank you so much, guys. If you have another question, please reach out to us or to Reyndert directly on LinkedIn. I'd like to wrap it up and respect Reyndert's time. We will share your LinkedIn profile if anybody wants to get in contact with you, learn more about the project, about yourself. Anything else, Reyndert, that you would like to share before we close?
No, not at this stage, but thanks for having me. It was really wonderful.
Thank you again. And see you guys soon, probably in September, at the new season of Full Funnel Live. Have a good rest of the summer. Cheers.
Bye.